Well, hi, Joey. It's so good to see you again. And welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. And welcome to all of you that are watching this as a recorded video. We're so grateful you're here. Today's workshop is going to be about sentence fragments and how to avoid them. So the first thing that we need to know is, like, what is a sentence fragment? Let's start with the idea of fragments in nature. Can you find the whole complete shells, Joey?
I see one in the middle and the big one.
Okay.
And it looks like there's a couple up front.
Okay. Okay. What do you think? The one with the yellow is a whole shell?
Yes. Yes.
And the little bitty ridged orange one?
Yeah, there might be one to the right, next to the orange one, but I can't tell.
It's hard to tell, isn't it?
It's a sand.
Can you find the pieces of shell? Are there any that are absolutely just a piece of a shell without a doubt?
Yes, the one beside the big one in the middle.
That little pink fragment?
Yes.
And then are there some that you're kind of not sure?
Yeah, the one on the other side of the big shell, the dark one.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one beside it that looks like a fragment.
Yeah. So some fragments are easy to spot, right? These pieces of shell, because these pieces of shell, this one for sure is actually a shell fragment, because the word fragment is a synonym for a piece of something. So just like a shell fragment is only a piece of a shell, a sentence fragment is only a piece of a sentence. Can you turn a shell fragment into a whole shell? Well, of course you can. You might have to think about it a little bit, but you can. And there are at least two ways to do so. First of all, you can find the rest of the shell, the other pieces, and you can glue all those pieces together until you have a whole. Or you can find the right materials and simply build onto the fragment until it takes the shape of a whole shell. The same is true for a sentence fragment. We can connect it to the sentence it belongs to, or we can build it into a whole sentence by adding all the right words to make the fragment into a whole, complete sentence. So let's start with the short paragraph. Joey, would you mind reading this paragraph out loud?
Okay. I have been working nonstop for 2 months. I am exhausted. However, I'm taking next week off and traveling down to Key Largo for 6 days. I will spend most of my time outdoors, swimming in the crystal blue water, snorkeling around the coral reefs, and just lying in the warm sun with a cool drink. I am so excited that I already have my suitcase packed. I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. That sounds like a lovely vacation and very thematic, given that we're looking at shells and talking about Key Largo, but it's hard to find that fragment the way you read it, Joey, because you did a beautiful job reading, but you read the paragraph as a whole. And reading the whole paragraph, what some scholars consider to be the complete thought, makes it hard to isolate a fragment. Let's think about that. The whole paragraph as a complete thought. Have you ever heard a sentence described as a complete thought?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a subject and a verb and makes a complete thought. Well, he runs. It's got a subject and a verb. Is that a complete thought?
It doesn't seem like it finishes.
Yes, but it is actually a sentence. He runs. But now let's put it in the context of a paragraph. All right. Jacob has been trying to reach his brother John for several weeks now. Every morning he calls and the call goes straight to voicemail. Finally, he reached out to John's wife and asked her, "What in the world is John doing every morning? I can't reach him." John's wife laughed and gave him a very short answer. He runs. Jacob laughed and said, "Every morning?" She replied, "Yes." And Jacob said, "How about if I call him in the afternoons?" And John's wife said, "That would be perfect. Meanwhile, I'm going to let him know that you've been trying to reach him." Now, he runs. Makes complete sense, doesn't it, in the context of that paragraph?
Yes.
Exactly. And that's why scholars are moving to the idea of thinking of the paragraph as a complete thought with the main idea and all of the supporting details necessary to complete that particular idea. Because sometimes sentences seem like a complete thought, other times they don't. So reading the paragraph all together as you did, Joey, which you did a beautiful job, makes it hard to isolate a fragment. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each sentence individually and see if it makes it a little easier to spot that fragment. So here we go. I have been working nonstop for 2 months. That sentence contains what we call an independent clause, and we're going to talk about those in a moment. I am exhausted. Very short sentence, but it is also an independent clause. It has a subject and a verb. However, I am taking next week off and traveling down to Key Largo for 6 days. Independent clause, complete sentence. I will spend most of my time outdoors. Independent clause, complete sentence. Swimming in the crystal blue water, snorkeling around the coral reefs, and just lying in the warm sun with a cool drink. Can you find a verb in this group of words, Joey?
Swimming? Oh, but that's not a verb.
Right. We learned when we discussed verbs and verbals that the ing form of the verb can never be a verb by itself. Is there a subject?
So the ing word would be the subject.
Then where's the verb?
There isn't one.
Exactly. There is no independent clause. I am so excited that I already have my suitcase packed. So looking at one sentence at a time and looking for those subjects and verbs made it a little bit easier to isolate that fragment. Did you notice that I kept using the term independent clause? Some of you watching may be familiar with that term, others may not be. So let's do a little review. But first of all, before we talk about, we'll show you exactly what makes an independent clause, I want you to know the reason I kept saying that is because without an independent clause, a group of words is automatically a fragment. Therefore, we need to learn about independent clauses. But before we do, I wanted to share with you the fact that when you are reading literature or professional writing, you may find some sentence fragments. And that doesn't mean that the writer doesn't know what they are doing. Because sometimes in creative writing and professional writing, it is a good stylistic choice to use sentence fragments. This is especially true with descriptive language or if you're trying to emphasize a point. But when you decide to use a fragment, it's important that you realize that that's what you're doing. There's an old saying, and I cannot remember who first said it, but it goes something like this: know the rules well, so you can break them with precision. Know the rules well, so you can break them with precision. So let's take a look at what these independent clauses are. Oh, by the way, understanding independent clauses will also help you avoid comma splice and few sentence errors, and that's what we're going to talk about in our next workshop. All right, let's take a look. First of all clauses have subjects and verbs, but you have independent clauses and dependent clauses. And when you look at these words, independent and dependent, I want you to think about human beings. Imagine a parent who is independent, who has money, has a house, is able to provide food for themselves and can take care of themselves. And now let's think about a dependent child that cannot do all of those things. How important is it for that dependent child to be connected to an independent adult to help take care of them? It's pretty important, isn't it? And the same is true here. An independent clause can stand by itself as a sentence. It doesn't need anything else. A dependent clause, just like a dependent child, needs to be connected to that independent clause in order to be a sentence. So let's take a look at a few independent clauses. John loves to swim. John is the subject, loves is the verb, and to swim is the object. It is the thing that John loves. And it's another kind of verbal, isn't it, Joey? Right? Mary is afraid of water. In this sentence, Joey, can you find the subject and the verb?
Mary is a subject and is afraid, or
Is by itself is the verb. Afraid is actually an adjective describing Mary. So the verb all by itself is, and that's a linking state of being verb, which we talked about in some of our previous workshops. John and Mary still go to the beach on weekends. Joey, can you find the subjects and the verbs in this one?
John and Mary is a subject. And go.
Go is the verb. Did you struggle with the word still for a moment?
Yeah, I guess it describes go.
It does, because what if I were to say John and Mary never go to the beach? See, never change the meaning of go, just like still changes the meaning of go. And that's what makes those adverbs. Now, your dependent clauses also have subjects and verbs, but they begin with either a subordinating conjunction, like although, because, or when. And let's take a look at John loves to swim, independent clause. Let's put although in front of it. Although John loves to swim. See, it can't stand by itself anymore, can it? It's got to be connected to an independent clause if we want to keep that although. Because Mary is afraid of water. What? Right? When John and Mary go to the beach. What? And all I did was add a subordinating conjunction to the front of what were already independent clauses and automatically made those clauses dependent.
I have a question.
Okay.
How do I know what are subordinating conjunctions?
Come back to our next workshop. Well, there are two things you can do. First of all, you can consult the Oracle, i.e. the internet. You can go to the internet and type in subordinating conjunctions, and you will find a list of all the subordinating conjunctions. That is one thing you can do. And that is the most complete thing to do. In our next workshop, we're going to list a lot of the subordinating conjunctions, and maybe not all of them, but we're going to have a more comprehensive list of them. But in the meantime, I think it's a really good idea to go ahead and use this amazing resource you've got. And I know there's a lot of criticism of the internet, and a lot of it is actually valid. But when used correctly, it is an amazing resource. And so when you have a question about a particular word or a term that you hear, just use the Oracle that is at your fingertips to learn more about that. That's an excellent question. Thank you, Joey. And then we have relative pronouns, such as who and that. Now, who loves to swim? As a question, perfect sentence. But as a statement, who loves to swim, it doesn't work. That John loves to swim doesn't work. So when you see a clause that has a relative pronoun, and again, you can consult the Oracle and to learn your complete list of relative pronouns. And I think there's like 7 of them. There may be, I think there's only 7 of those, but now for your subordinating conjunctions, there's a huge list of those. But now let's look at these. Because a sentence is a group of words containing at least one independent clause, by the way, that is the best definition of a sentence I've ever found. Get rid of the because that makes the first part of this dependent. Let's go ahead and finish that thought. Okay, but let's just get rid of the because and make this a sentence is a group of words containing at least one independent clause. But if I put a period after these following dependent clauses, they automatically become fragments. Why? Because every sentence has to have at least one independent clause. So these groups of words are just pieces of sentence, and they have to be connected to an independent clause to collect their meaning, to complete their meaning. So let's take a look at that. John is a man who loves to swim. The green is the independent clause, the red is the dependent clause. Although John loves to swim, Mary is afraid of water. Mary hates the fact that John loves to swim. Because Mary is afraid of water, John doesn't swim when they go to the beach. When John and Mary go to the beach, they stay on the shore together. Notice how each of these became a complete sentence as soon as I added the independent clause. Any questions about this, Joey?
No.
Walking along the beach, playing frisbee, or just relaxing in their beach chairs. When John and Mary go to the beach, they stay on the shore together, period. Walking along the beach, playing frisbee, or just relaxing in their beach chairs. Oops, there's one of those pesky verbal fragments, because not only can we create fragments by punctuating a dependent clause as a sentence, but we can also create a fragment by punctuating a verbal phrase like it were a sentence. So let's turn those verbals into subjects and give them a verb. So walking, playing, and relaxing, we're going to turn those into nouns. And there's my verb, are activities they can enjoy together. Are is my verb. Look at my subjects, walking, playing, relaxing. These are the things. Now, did you notice they can enjoy together? Looks like an independent clause, doesn't it? But there's an invisible that, and that's something I wanted to point out to you, that particular relative pronoun, that, can sometimes be invisible. You'll know you're dealing with an invisible that if you just try putting the that in there and see if it works. Walking along the beach, playing frisbee, or just relaxing in their beach chairs are activities that they can enjoy together. Because in English, that little shorthand, sometimes we can just leave a word out and the sentence still makes sense. Can't leave subjects and verbs out, but we can leave other little words out. Like, remember when we did the workshop on verbals and I showed you the place that had the invisible to for the infinitive? Yeah, this is kind of like that. Okay. So the fragment that we located in this paragraph, it is a verbal phrase fragment. And we learned about verbal phrases in our first workshop on verbs and verbals. But now let's look at how we can fix this. Right? There's the verb, there's the fragment. Swimming in the crystal blue water, snorkeling around the coral reefs, and just lying in the warm sun with a cool drink. Joey, do you remember the two ways that we can fix fragments?
Yeah, you can connect to another independent clause, or you can add to it.
Perfect. Good. So let's see. Here's one thing. We're going to go with the first way. I will spend most of my time outdoors. I changed that period to a comma. I made my S in swimming lowercase. So I connected my fragment to the sentence in front of it. I will spend most of my time outdoors, swimming in the crystal blue water, snorkeling around the coral reefs, and just lying in the warm sun with a cool drink. And here's the second way. We're going to just leave that fragment, but we're going to add to it to make it its own independent sentence. Swimming in the crystal blue water, snorkeling around the coral reefs, and just lying in the warm sun with a cool drink are some activities that I have planned. Where's my verb now? Do you see the verb that I added, Joey?
Are.
Are. And what are? Where are my subjects? What are some of the activities that I have planned?
Swimming, snorkeling, and lying.
Exactly. Now notice my that I have planned. Can I turn this into an invisible that, do you think?
Yes.
Well, we'll know for sure if we read it out loud. Reading out loud is your very best tool. Swimming in the crystal blue water, snorkeling around the coral reefs, and just lying in the warm sun with a cool drink are some activities I have planned.
Yeah.
Yep. That is one of the cases where you can leave that out. Can't always do it, but sometimes you can. And it's very important to read your sentences out loud. I am so excited that I already have my suitcase packed. Let's try it with this one. I am so excited. I already have my suitcase packed. I kind of want that there in that one. Stylistically speaking, I think it makes my sentence more clear. Makes my sentence clearer. So we have seen fragments caused by dependent clauses being mistaken for independent clauses, and by verbal phrases that need to either be built up into an independent clause or connected to an independent clause that is already in the paragraph. But sometimes a fragment is called simply because the subject has been left out and sometimes part of the verb. But let's look at an example in this very short paragraph of 3 sentences and see if we can spot the fragment. Joey, you're welcome to read it out loud if that will be helpful.
Okay. John used to spend a lot of time swimming. He had a membership to the city community center. He swam in the pool there every morning. On weekends, would go to the beach and swim there. Oh, okay. So the last one doesn't have John in it. So that's a subject.
Or he. Yeah, and I want to caution you, those of you that are listening, and you as well, Joey, that when you are proofreading your own sentences, it's really easy sometimes to just put the word in there that's in our head and not necessarily notice that it's missing from the sentence we've written. So that's another reason for slowing down a little bit, because I've seen students do this and read it like this. John used to spend a lot of time swimming. He had a membership to the city community center. He swam in the pool there every morning. On weekends, he would go to the beach and swim there. And they put that he in there because in their mind, they know it belongs there, but they didn't notice that when they were writing, they actually left it out. So it's very important that you pay close attention to the words that are actually on the page. It's actually easier to proofread what somebody else has written than it is what you've written, because what you've written started out in your mind, right? When you're reading what somebody else has written, that didn't start out in your mind. So you've already got in your mind the words you planned to put on the page. Doesn't always match the words that actually ended up on the page. All right, let's do a quick review. A sentence is a group of words containing
independent clause.
There you go. A sentence fragment is a piece of the sentence because
no independent clause.
Yeah. Sentence fragments can be
verbals.
They can be. They can be a dependent clause punctuated like a sentence. They can be a verbal phrase punctuated like a sentence, or
missing a word.
Yes, or words. An almost sentence with a missing word or two, most commonly the subject, but sometimes the helping verb in a complete verb. All right, let's practice. Which of the following sentences is actually a fragment?
C.
While other cities did nothing. What kind of a fragment do you think that is, Joey?
It has a relative pronoun.
It has a dependent word while. That's a subordinate conjunction. Doesn't matter necessarily that you know which one it is, but you're absolutely right. The word while makes this clause dependent. Because if I got rid of the while and all C said was other cities did nothing, I'd have a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute I put that dependent word in front of it, which happens to be a subordinating conjunction, I created a fragment. How do you think we should fix this one, Joey?
You can connect it to the sentence before.
Here in the United States, some cities shut down businesses, had mask mandates, and canceled all events with crowds, while other cities did nothing. Yep, I think that's a great fix. C was the correct answer. All right. Which of the following sentences is actually a fragment?
B.
Absolutely. And what kind of fragment do you think this is?
It's a dependent clause.
We know it's a clause because it has a subject and a verb. They are bred and have.
So
It's
it has that word that makes it dependent.
when. That's exactly right. And we saw that when John and Mary go to the beach.
Mhm.
Okay, again, consult your oracle, print out those words or practice writing those dependent words out. Create a little independent clause for yourself, a very short little independent clause, complete sentence, and then put a word like when in front of it. Put a word like although in front of it. Put a word like if in front of it. Put a word like because in front of it, and notice what happens. Then add a new independent clause and create a sentence. That type of practice can't be beat for really helping you remember these words. Okay, how do you think we should fix this fragment? B.
This one you can connect to the one after it.
Yep. Sometimes it belongs to the sentence after it. However, when they are properly bred and have good owners, comma, they make wonderful pets and or service animals. Beautiful job, Joey. Which sentence is actually a fragment? You're muted.
Okay, so B, because of the ing word, I forgot what it's called, gerund.
Yep, because it has no verb. It could become the subject, but it doesn't have a verb. Now, if you were going to fix this, so first of all, let me show you that yes, indeed, you are correct. Now, how would you fix this one, Joey? Can we connect it to another sentence?
You can, but it makes it a really long sentence, like a whole paragraph.
It does, doesn't it? Because of the recent pandemic and resulting quarantine, many schools have developed or improved their online classes and online educational resources, leading to an ongoing debate about whether schools, I'm exhausted already, I haven't even finished the sentence. Okay, so let's figure out a way to turn B into its own complete sentence. Do you have any ideas, Joey?
You can make it a sentence. So this has led to.
Yeah. Oh, has led. So did you go back and review the perfect and perfect continuous tenses?
Yes.
This has led, began in the past as of the present moment. Good. This has led to an ongoing debate about whether schools should return to primarily face-to-face education or continue with online learning. Good job, Joey. Excellent work. Which of the following does not contain a fragment? And it's really important to pay attention to that little adverb, not.
The third one. C.
Yeah, I have been on hold for an hour now and ready to hang up. Which one is a fragment?
So it's the second one because it's missing I.
There you go. Now I am ready to hang up. Or we could connect it with and. I have been on hold for an hour and am now ready to hang up. Okay, so now here are some important things to remember. A piece of a shell may seem whole until it is picked up and carefully examined. Likewise, a sentence fragment can look like a complete sentence unless it is carefully and slowly read out loud. A sentence fragment may be a dependent clause, a verbal phrase, or a group of words missing a subject or complete verb. Next workshop will be, we're going to do a deeper dive into independent clauses, and we're going to review the words that can make clauses dependent as we look at ways to recognize and avoid comma splices and fused / run-on sentences. Meanwhile, consult the Oracle, gather a list of your subordinating conjunctions and your relative pronouns, practice writing independent clauses, play around with turning them into dependent clauses and then connecting them to a second independent clause, and just see how much fun it can be. It's like putting together puzzle pieces. Joey, did you have any questions before we close out?
No, I think it makes sense.
I thank you so much for joining me, and for all of you that are watching this via video, I thank you as well, and I hope to see you in our next workshop.